Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskrityam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Tato Jayam Udirayet
Tato Jayamudiraye
Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu
Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki
Srinvatam Swakataha Krishna
Srimvatam Swakatha Krishna
Punyashravana Kirtana
Punyasravana Kirtana
Vidyantasto Bhadrani
Vidyanto Stoti Abhadrani
Vidhunoti Suhrit Satam
Vidhunoti Sarassatam
Krishnaya Vasudevaya
Krishnaya Vasudevaya
Devaki Nandanaya Cha
Devaki Nandanaya Cha
Nandagopa Kumaraya
Nandagopa Kumaraya
Govindaya Namo Namaha.
Govindaya Namo Namah.
Hare Krishna. So we'll continue from 24th verse. We covered the last week we covered this section where Sutta Goswami expressed his humility before he begins Srimad Bhagavatam. He glorified the holy name and Vaishnava Seva, and he glorified the position of Lord, and how attachment to Lord will relieve one from all kinds of it automatically detach one from material things. So now we'll begin 24th verse. Ikada dhanur udyamya
Ekada Dhanur Udyamya
charan mrigayam vane
Vicharan
mrigan anugata shranta
Mrigan Anugata
shuditas trishito brisham
Shrutithas Trishito Vrisham
jalasayam achakshana
Jalasayam Akakshana
pravivesha tamashramam
Pravesha Tamasramam
tadarsha munimasinam
Dadarsha Munivasinam
santam militalocanam.
Santam Militalochanam.
Yeah, now the story begins of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, anyone please read?
Once upon a time, Mahārāja Parīkṣit, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bow and arrows, became extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty while following the stags. While searching for a reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well-known Samika Rishi and saw the sage sitting silently with closed eyes.
So this is Maharaj as a king, as a Kshatriya. He was practicing archery in the forest because he is supposed to protect the people of the world. So it is as a matter of duty they practice. So while doing that, he was very thirsty and he didn't carry any water. So he entered the hermitage of Samika Rishi, who is actually sitting in meditation.
The Supreme Lord is so kind to his pure devotees that in proper time he calls such devotees up to him and thus creates an auspicious circumstance for the devotee. Mahārāja Parīkṣit was a pure devotee of the Lord, and there was no reason for him to become extremely fatigued, hungry, and thirsty because a devotee of the Lord never becomes perturbed by such bodily demands. But by the desire of the Lord, even such a devotee can become apparently fatigued and thirsty just to create a situation favorable for his renunciation of worldly activities.
So the situation given here, so Maharaj Parīkṣit, he became fatigued, hungry, and thirsty. So this is not generally found in a great devotee like Parīkṣit. For example, when he was born, there was this great Brahmastra with scorching heat. He was not disturbed. And the way he spent his last 7 days, we all know that he did not drink, he did not eat, he did not change his attention of mind even to rest for a moment. For the entire 7 days, he was completely awake and conscious, was completely absorbed in hearing the holy name. So he is not a person on material platform. We can understand from his activities at the time of birth as well as at the time of last 1 week of his lifetime. So he is a great devotee. It is not usual for him to become hungry, thirsty like a ordinary human being. But there was a greater plan of the Lord in this, and because of which he was put in such circumstances of bodily demands. Right? It's only by the desire of the Lord. So what makes a great devotee? So the great devotees are malleable to the will of the Lord. Malleable means they can be easily tuned and played according to the will of the Lord. For example, Arjuna becomes bewildered as soon as he entered the battlefield. So that in that way he became an instrument for giving the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to the entire world. So similarly here, Parīkṣit Maharaj is becoming an instrument in the hand of the Lord, so that Bhagavatam will be delivered to this world. So they do not mind, the devotees do not mind the difficulties they had to face, but they are always malleable. That makes a devotee. What is one characteristic, greatest important characteristic of a devotee is he is malleable to the desire of the Lord. For example, Yudhishthira Maharaj was confused after the battle was over, and everybody tried to convince him to rule the country, but he was confused. He was not willing to, until Bhishma was able to, convince him with the words of wisdom. So Lord Krishna wanted Bhishma to speak Vishnu Sahasranama and the Rajaniti to Yudhishthira Maharaj. So Yudhishthira Maharaj and Bhishma, both of them are wonderful instruments in the hands of the Lord. So in this way, Lord engages devotees at different circumstances, and he would create circumstances such that devotee would serve the purpose for the greater good of the world. Right? So in this way, Parīkṣit Maharaj was put in this difficult situation right now.
The Supreme Lord never forgets his pure devotee, even though he may be engaged in so-called worldly affairs. Sometimes he creates an awkward situation, and the devotee becomes obliged to renounce all worldly affairs. The devotee can understand by the signal of the Lord, but others take it to be unfavorable and frustrating. Mahārāja Parīkṣit was to become the medium for the revelation of Srimad Bhagavatam by Lord Sri Krishna, as his grandfather Arjuna was the medium for the Bhagavad Gita. Had Arjuna not been taken up with an illusion of family affection by the will of the Lord, the Bhagavad Gita would not have been spoken by the Lord himself for the good of all concerned. Similarly, had Mahārāja Parīkṣit not been fatigued, hungry, and thirsty at this time, Srimad Bhagavatam would not have been spoken by Srila Sukadeva Goswami, the prime authority of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, this is a prelude to circumstances under which Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken for the benefit of all concerned. The prelude, therefore, begins with the words "once upon a time."
It is only completely a plan of the Lord. So the whole thing is orchestrated as the desire of the Lord. Pratiruddhendriya prana
Pratiruddhendriya prana
manobuddhim
मनोबुद्धिम्
Manobuddhim
उपारतम्
anatrayat prayam praptam param praptam
परं प्राप्तं
brahmabhutam avikriyam.
ब्रह्मभूतम् अविक्रयम्.
Please read.
Only sense organs, breath, mind, and intelligence were all restrained from material activities, and he was situated in a trance apart from the three wakefulness, dream, and unconsciousness, having achieved a transcendental position qualitatively equal with the Supreme Absolute.
So the Muni, he was practicing yoga by restraining his breath. He's already at a very elevated state of consciousness, Sushupti state. So he was totally absorbed in that transcendental consciousness. Yeah.
It appears that Muni, in whose hermitage the king entered, was in yogic trance. The transcendental position is attained by three processes, namely the process of Gyan or theoretical knowledge of transcendence, the process of Yoga or a factual realization of trance by manipulation of psychological and psychological function of the body, and the most approved process of Bhakti Yoga or the engagement of senses in the devotional service of the Lord.
Yeah, there are three methods: Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. So in this case, the Muni is practicing Ashtanga Yoga.
So Prabhu, why does it say that it is attaining the qualitatively equal with the Supreme Absolute?
Because that is qualitative oneness means one realizes his position as the as a soul who is with has the Satchidananda position. So that is called Brahman realization.
Oh, Brahman.
So it is only Brahman realization that qualitative oneness is Brahman realization.
Okay.
So understanding that I am like a particle of gold and God is like gold mine. We are qualitatively Satchidananda, equal in terms of one's own, one's state, basically, right?
Yes.
So it's basically in Jnana terms, it's called pure consciousness. So absolute truth is pure consciousness, and one realizes that he is also absolute, he is also pure in consciousness. So
got it. But quantitatively, quantity-wise,
quantity-wise, of course, no way the jiva will never be equal to.
Never be equal to, absolutely. Yes.
So that is. So they consider themselves to unite with the Lord. So all yogis do not have the same understanding of the absolute truth. Some accept they are qualitatively one, and that's all. Some people think they merge into God, right? So they become one with the Lord. So that is that
merge means merge into the empty, like Brahman effulgence of the Lord, right? But not Lord himself.
Not Lord in himself. It's always into the Brahman effulgence of the Lord.
Thank you, bro.
But because Brahman effulgence is effulgence of Lord, it's like merging into.
The same. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Viprakirna jatachannam
Viprakirna
Rauravena jinena cha
Rauravena Jinena Cha
Shushyattalurudakam
Adyattalur Udakam
Bhutam ayachate.
Tata
Tata Bhutam Avyachata.
Yeah, please read. Anybody? The sage in meditation was covered by the skin of a stag, and long compressed hair was scattered all over him. The king, whose palate was dry from thirst, asked him for water. So the sage was sitting there, and king approached his hermitage, and he requested for water. He asked for water. He was very thirsty and fatigued, so he requested. Generally, it's like, suppose you are at your home and suddenly Prime Minister of the country comes to your home and asks for water. That is like that. Same thing. Maharaj Parīkṣit is the Chakravarti. He's like head of the entire planet. Alabdha trina bhumyadir
Adir
asamprapta ragya sunrita
Asampragya
avajnatam ivatmanam
Avajnatam Ivatmanam
Yamanas chukopaha.
Manyamana Chukopyat.
Yeah. Anyone?
The king not received by any formal welcome by means of being offered a seat, place, water, and sweet addresses, considered himself neglected, and so thinking he became angry.
So generally a king is received very well by anybody. So especially a sage like Samika Rishi has to receive him appropriately. So he was already very fatigued and tired. So he did not see whether the sage is, in his state of trance. So he felt neglected. Sometimes it happens, right? So one may feel fatigued, and so in that condition of state, he become angry. But generally, this is not the behavior of devotee. So he became angry. This anger is because of why the king became angry. Anybody? Any guesses?
Because that situation was created by the Lord.
Absolutely. That was the only reason for his anger. A situation was created by the Lord such that he becomes angry at this time. No other reason. He's not like a materialistic person who had a hurt ego. Instead of being great king, it was not the cause. It's not false ego. It is only a situation created by the Lord. Yeah.
The law of reception in the course of the Vedic principles states that even if an enemy is received at home, he must be received with all respects. He should not be given a chance to understand that he has come into the house of an enemy. When Lord Krishna, accompanied by Arjuna and Bhima, approached Jarasandha in Magadha, The respectable enemies were given a royal reception by King Jarasandha. The guest enemy, namely Bhima, was to fight with Jarasandha, and yet they were given a grand reception.
This is Vedic culture. It doesn't matter, even if you approach an enemy's home, you will be received with respects. So here Prabhupada just explains that Parīkṣit Maharaj was in need of water. He was very thirsty and fatigued. The Rishi did not receive him. It was a cold reception. And he was very tired. So in that situation, he became a little angry. Yeah, please read this, Prabhu.
The merciful Lord sometimes creates such awkward positions for his pure devotees in order to drag them towards himself from the mire of material existence. But outwardly, the situations appear to be frustrating to the devotees. The devotees of the Lord are always under the protection of the Lord. And in any condition, frustration or success, the Lord is the supreme guide for the devotees. The pure devotees, therefore, accept all conditions of frustrations as blessings from the Lord.
So the devotees of the Lord are under the divine protection of the Lord. Daivim prakritim ashritaha. They are always, Bhagavad Gita says, the pure devotees are always under the direct shelter of the Lord. So they cannot be affected by the material situations, right? But Lord creates this awkward position to actually pull them from material existence, right? When Srila Prabhupada was, before he started the ISKCON movement, he was a family man with a big business. So slowly Krishna was taking one after the other of his material possessions. His medical shop was on fire one fine day, and he lost all his wealth. He basically became a pauper towards the end of it. So externally, people who hear about these kind of situations think, oh, he must be a very unfortunate person. And but actually, these are all arrangements of the Lord for whatever reasons. It's a special mercy of the Lord, so that devotee will be engaged in pure devotion service, right? So Krishna has some purpose to fulfill through them. If Prabhupada's business was going fine, he might have postponed his travel to America, right? So if everything is going fine, what would happen? It would have been different. So Krishna has a purpose behind everything that happens. So by the mercy of the Lord, devotee understands his awkward position and accepts will of the Lord over everything else. Devotee is always obedient to the will of the Lord, right? If there is one thing that should change, that should come as a change in our life as a practicing devotee, is that we're always obedient to the authorities. Devotee is obedient to his spiritual master and the authorities, and ultimately to the will of the Lord, right? Whatever may be the material circumstance, he knows very well, this is for my best. I don't know how. It may be very awkward at this current moment. I may be in great difficulty materially, but I know this is the best situation for me to progress in Krishna consciousness, because Lord is all loving. He knows what is best. One may consider it is his karma. There is nothing that happens without karma in generally. But for a devotee's case, he will never think it is an awkward arrangement of the Lord. It is something that will bring him close to Krishna. How, what, those are details, but one fully accepts obediently. Right? So that's the thing that differentiates between demigods and Danavas. Right? Every time this is very, very clear during the churning of the ocean, right? Milk ocean, to bring out the nectar. the Danavas or the Rakshasas are always, why should we be at the tail? We want the head. So they're always egoistic in their, even though they all, so Lord wanted both Danavas and Devatas to work together to bring out the nectar, right? The world is a mix of everybody. Only when everybody comes together can something new, great created. So as part of this arrangement, at every instance in that whole episode, you would see the Danavas would get hurt by their false ego. We want to be at the head. We want to be the first to be served. So in that way, every instance of the way, you will see that Danavas would always be frustrated because of the situation they're in. They want to be the best. They want a better position than the Devatas. But Devatas were always under the, Lord would say, you guys go to the tail. They all go together. So that is the nature of a devotee. He accepts an authority and follows them. Right? The prime symptom of a non-devotee or a Danava or a Rakshasa's mentality is they're always in denial. First, break all the rules. They don't want to follow anybody. They are the kings. Independent mentality, right? So this is one practical lesson we can all see. Sometimes we also face situations where we need to make a decision and either to follow superior authority or to not follow. So the decision is ours, and it proves whether we are obedient or not, right? Kali Yuga means there is a lot of influence of false ego. So we have to watch out. When somebody is giving an advice, we have to be open-minded to see what is, not just from basic external results. We have to see the depth.
Prabhuji, can I add one comment, Prabhuji?
Yes.
Yeah, Prabhuji, this is a very beautiful verse actually. So Krishna is telling, so he is selecting only the pure devotees to put them into the awkward condition, so that to show the world that how dependent they are on Krishna, how much love they are showing towards Krishna even in that position, so that others can see and learn. And that mixed devotion, whoever is having mixed devotion, it will help them to bring them closer to the Krishna. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So devotees are always malleable to the will of the Lord. That's what makes them a devotee.
Yeah.
Malleable to the will of the Lord. Obedience to the will of the Lord. They accept the authority. That is the obedience, accepting authority. These are qualities of a devotee. Or a person who has these qualities can potentially become a devotee, right?
Yeah.
The whole problem of coming to the middle world is we denied the superiority of the Supreme Lord, right?
Yes, yeah.
And again, to go back, we need to completely become obedient to the Lord and accept the will of the Lord.
Yes. Thank you.
Abhuta purva sahasa shutrid bhayam arditatmana brahmanam prati adbhut brahman saro manyurevacha.
Matsaro
Please read.
O Brahmanas, the circumstances having distressed him with extreme hunger, thirst, the king directed towards the sage his anger and envy, which he had never before directed toward a Brahman.
So, I mean, what can we say? This is not a real quality of Parīkṣit Maharaj. Anger and envy, these were all circumstantial, and it is mentioned here, he never directed toward a Brahmana like this before. This is the first time he exhibited, but it's an arrangement of the life.
For a king like Mahārāja Parīkṣit to become angry and envious, especially at a sage and a Brahman, was undoubtedly unprecedented. The king knew well that Brahmanas, sages, children, women, and old men are always beyond the jurisdiction of punishment. Similarly, the king, even though he commits a great mistake, is never to be considered a wrongdoer. But in this case, Maharaj Parīkṣit became angry and envious at the sage due to his thirst and hunger. By the will of the Lord, the king was right to punish his subject for coldly receiving him or neglecting him, but because the culprit was a sage and a Brahman, it was unprecedented. As the Lord is never envious of anyone, so also the Lord's devotee is never envious of anyone. The only justification for the Maharaj Parikshit's behavior is that it was ordained by the Lord.
There is no other justification. It must be because the will of the Lord, right?
Wonderful.
Because he never did this before. If it is a casual thing for this king in terms of his behavior, that he's sometimes angry towards Brahmanas, then we can understand. But there was never a circumstance in like this before for Maharaj Parikshit. We can understand from the future verses as well. Satu Brahma Risheram se
Satu Brahma Rushayanam se
Asum Uragam Rusha
Gata Sumuranga Rusha
Vinirgachan Dhanush Kotya
Vinirgacha Dhanush Kotya
Dhaya Puramagata.
Nidhaya
Nidhaya
Puram.
Puram.
Yeah, please read.
While leaving, the king, being so insulted, picked up a lifeless snake with his bow and angrily placed it on the shoulders of the sage. Then he returned to his palace.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mataji, continue.
The king thus treated the sage for that, although he was never
Accustomed to such a
silly actions by the will of the Lord, the king, while going away, found a dead snake in front of him, and he thought of that the sage who had coldly received him thus might be coldly rewarded by being offered a garland of a dead snake.
So he was just returning and he saw a dead snake and he just put that around the sage's shoulders. It was unexpected of him because it's such a silly action. Who would do? A great king? Why would a great king like Parīkṣit Maharaj would ever do such a silly action? But it's all, sometimes it can happen like that. We can act very silly. Yeah. Esha kim nibritashesa. Karano milite kshana.
Karano milite
Samadhir ahoshvit.
Samadhir
Nushat Kshatra Bandhubhi.
Kimnusha Kshatrabandhavi.
Yeah, please read.
Upon returning, he began to contemplate and argue within himself whether the sage had actually been in meditation with senses concentrated and eyes closed, or whether he had just been feigning trance just to avoid receiving a lower kshatriya.
So Parīkṣit was thinking, whether he was feigning trance or whether he is really, absorbed in his meditation. Yeah. So he was, factually, he was not approving of his own actions. We'll read that in the next verses. Yeah. Please read.
The king, being a devotee of the Lord, did not approve of his own action, and thus he began to wonder whether the sage was really in a trance or was just pretending in order to avoid receiving the king, who was a Kshatriya and therefore lower in rank. Repentance comes in the mind of a good soul as soon as he commits something wrong. Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura and Srila Jiva Goswami do not believe that the king's action was due to his past misdeeds. The arrangement was so made by the Lord just to call the king back home, back to Godhead. According to Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti, the plan was made by the will of the Lord, and by the will of the Lord, the situation of frustration was created. The plan was that for his so-called misdeed, the king could be cursed by an inexperienced Brahmana boy, infected by the influence of Kali, and thus the king would leave his earth and home for good. His connection with Srila Sukadeva Goswami would enable the presentation of great Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered to be the book incarnation of the Lord. This book incarnation of the Lord gives much fascinating information of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, like his Rasalila with the spiritual cowherd damsels of Rajabhumi.
So this is just sowing the seed to present Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah.
Being distressed by hunger and thirst was only a show, because the king endured much even in the womb of his mother. He was never disturbed by the glaring heat of the Brahmastra released by Ashwatthama. The king's distressed condition was certainly unprecedented. The devotees like Mahārāja Parīkṣit are powerful enough to forbear such distresses by the will of the Lord, and they are never disturbed. The situation in this case was therefore all planned by the Lord.
We can see from the example, his own life, examples of his birth as well as the time when he was hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, we can understand he can easily tolerate. He's beyond all of that. He's a pure devotee. Yeah, let's read these verses directly translation instead of Sanskrit. I can read the translation, you can read the purport. The sage had a son who was very powerful, being a Brahmana's son. While he was playing with inexperienced boys, he heard of his father's distress, which was occasioned by the king. Then and there, the boy spoke as follows. So the boy, Shringi is his name. That is the son of the sage. He was playing with his own friends, all of his age, right? The sage mentions him as inexperienced boys. The reason is, the only reason the curse happened is because the boys are really inexperienced. If suppose I am cursing, I am doing something wrong. If I am surrounded by people who are somewhat experienced or somewhat wise, I would not be doing that way, because I would be stopped by doing the wrong action, right? So this boy is inexperienced, and he's also surrounded by people who are inexperienced. All kids around him, all are Brahmana boys. And next verses you will hear how he curses, and these boys wouldn't do anything. So the curse would, take effect right away on Mahārāja Parīkṣit, right? So because of the situation around him, nobody could stop the curse. He heard that his father was insulted like this. In fact, his father was not even in distress. He conceived that his father was in distress because of what has happened. Somebody told, hey, there was this great king King Parīkṣit who came to your home and he put a garland of snake around the neck of your father. So he heard that, and he immediately was distressed. Of course, one can feel distressed, but his action was very rash after that. Yeah. So then he speaks after this. Yeah. Anybody want to read?
Due to Maharaj Parīkṣit's good government, even a boy of tender age who was playing with other inexperienced boys could become as powerful as a qualified Brahmana. This boy was known as Shringi, and he achieved good training in Brahmacharya by his father so that he could be as powerful as a Brahmana even at that age.
Even though the boy was very young, because of the Vedic culture preserved by Parīkṣit Maharaj, he had perfect conditions to become a trained like a perfect Brahmana through practice of Brahmacharya, right? So it was all actually mercy of king, because king is the ruler of the entire country, and he was making the right circumstances to make the Brahminical culture prevail in his times. Yeah. Go ahead, Mataji.
But because the age of Kali was seeking an opportunity to spoil the cultural heritage of the four orders of life, the inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from the Brahmana boy under the influence of Kali, and thus cultural life began to dwindle day after day. The first victim of Brahmanical injustice was Mahārāja Parīkṣit, and thus the protection given by the king against the onslaught of Kali was slackened.
So we all hear that at the beginning of Kali Yuga, the Brahmanical culture was are destroyed, right? So this is the first incident of such Brahmanical injustice. Brahmana, a person of higher caste, cursing a person of lower caste, right? Kshatriya, right? So Maharaj Parīkṣit was the first victim of Brahmanical injustice. And the whole caste system began with the, so Kali first destroyed the Brahmanical culture. The influence of Kali first destroyed Brahmanical culture. Brahmanas became egoistic, feeling that they are of higher order than the other society, other orders of the society. And as soon as that false ego came, the whole culture was destroyed. That's the beginning of Kali Yuga. And now Kshatriya, other categories also are destroyed now. So nobody is really pure now. But this is the beginning of destruction of or influence of Kali. The Brahmana's son, Shringi, said, I didn't want to read these verses because these are, Shringi's verses and story like, right? So we just want to read. Just look at the sins of the rulers who, like crows and watchdogs at the door, perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants. So, see, you can clearly see the culture of this Brahmana boy, Shringi. He was very inconsiderate of lower caste. Even though the lower caste person here is Parīkṣit Maharaj himself, who is the ruler of the entire world, he just couldn't tolerate what has happened. He's calling the king as crows and watchdogs. It shows he's a very low cultured person. The Brahmana boy, even though he is a Brahmana born, but his culture is very low, right? Yeah, perpetrate against their master. So he considers himself superior to Kshatriyas, right? So this is not Brahmanical culture. Actual true Brahmanical culture is never superior, showing superiority over others. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I read Parīkṣit? The Brahmanas are considered to be the head and brains of the social body, and the Kshatriyas are considered to be the arms of the social body. The arms are required to protect the body from all harm, but the arms must act according to the directions of the head and brain. There is a natural arrangement made by the supreme order. For it's confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that 4 social orders or castes, namely the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Shudras, are set up according to the quality and work done by them. Naturally, the sons of Brahmanas has a good character to become a Brahmana by the direction of his qualified father. As a son of a medical practitioner has a very good chance to become a qualified medical practitioner. So, the caste system is quite scientific. The son must take advantage of the father's qualification and thus become a Brahmana or a medical practitioner and not otherwise. Without being qualified, one cannot become a Brahmana or medical practitioner. And that is the verdict of all scriptures and social orders. Herein, Shringi, a qualified son of a great Brahmana, attained the required Brahminical power both by birth and by training. But he was lacking in culture because he was an inexperienced boy.
He attained Brahminical power because of his being born to a Brahmana, and he was also a recipient of good training. But unfortunately, he lacks good culture. The way he was speaking, you can see he is very rude. So this is the beginning of downfall of Brahminical powers. So we'll continue. The descendants of the kingly orders are definitely designated as watchdogs. This guy is continuing to speak these words, very harsh. And they must keep themselves at the door. So he's not approving that this great Parīkṣit king, he can enter the house of his father. On what grounds can dogs enter the house and claim to dine with the master on the same plate? Look at his impudence. Yeah. Very, very rude behavior.
Experienced Brahman boy certainly knew that the king asked for water from his father, and the father did not respond. He tried to explain away his father's inhospitality in an impertinent manner, befitting an uncultured boy. He was not at all sorry for the king's not being well received. On the contrary, he justified the wrong act in a way characteristic of the Brahmana of Kali Yuga.
This is the way Brahmanas of Kali Yuga behave, it seems. That's what Prabhupada is saying here. This is the culture of today's Brahmana. They think they are superior to others. Only the Brahmanas born by caste, right? That's not proper Brahmanical culture.
This mentality of a false prestige is the cause of downfall of the perfect social order. And we can see that in the beginning, it was started by the experienced son of Brahman.
So all of you, as you move in this world, a lot of people, Indians as well as outside Indians, Americans or anybody, they have this one notion that, hey, you study Bhagavad Gita. Oh, Bhagavad Gita is the book that talks about the caste system. That actually, a lot of people have reservations on Bhagavad Gita. They have this wrong notion or understanding about Bhagavad Gita, that Bhagavad Gita is the one that proposes this caste system, and Bhagavad Gita is the book that promotes war. So all these kinds of incorrect understanding. So it is our duty to clarify actually what is the system that Krishna has given and how it is logical, right? So Prabhupada is explaining in these verses. The whole caste system has failed because of the wrong mentality of the people, right? So it's because of the false prestige in the heads of Brahmanas, the downfall of Brahmanical culture began, and then so forth continued for other Kshatriya in other categories as well. So other ashramas as well. So that is the beginning. So false prestige. So the caste system that we see today is not the one that Krishna has originally created. Right? That is all false or perverted reflection of original system that Krishna has given. According to the boy's opinion, the king was on the wrong side and not his father, and thus he's justified his silent father. So he was not at all looking at his father's mistake. He was only blaming the king for his action, but he didn't consider Parīkṣit Mahārāja's situation at all. Krishne gate bhagavati
Krishnagate
Krishne gati bhagavati
sastari utpata gaminam
Sastari Utpadagamina
setun ajaham
Tadbhinna Setun Adyaham
pashyatame bhalam.
Sasmi Pashyatame Bhalam.
Please read.
The departure of the Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead and supreme ruler of everyone, these upstarts have flourished. Our protector being gone, therefore I myself shall take up this manner and punish them. Just witness my power.
Wow. See? So, so he's saying Lord Krishna departed from this world. Now all these upstarts, these kings like Parīkṣit, they have flourished, and now they are, the first part is correct. Krishna has left the world, and now he's blaming that, everybody, the kings are now very unruly and they're bad, upstarts, he's calling them. Therefore, I myself shall take up this matter and punish them. So he is actually taking the position of who?
of the Lord himself, actually.
Yeah, he is becoming Krishna now. So he is, this is the, this is the snare of Maya, illusion. See, he's trying to take, he's not consulting anybody, he's just taking things into his hand completely. Just witness my power. See, he thinks he is the all-powerful. Yeah, please read.
The inexperienced Brāhmaṇa, puffed up by a little Brahma Tejas, became influenced by the spell of Kali Yuga. Mahārāja Parīkṣit gave license to Kali to live in 4 places as mentioned herein before. But by his very expert government, the personality of Kali could hardly find the places allotted him. The little Brahmana wanted to show his prowess in destruction, and he had the audacity to punish such a great king as Mahārāja Parīkṣit. He wanted to take the place of Lord Krishna after his departure. These are the principal signs of upstarts who want to take the place of Sri Krishna under the influence of the age of Kali.
Yeah. So he is a small boy, but he has the audacity to punish great king like Parīkṣit. He did not consider what is his duty, what is he doing, what is his position, and what is my position. He just took everything into his hand. Such a, such an unruly person, even though he is a young, small boy. The son of the Rishi, his eyes red hot with anger, touched the water of the river Kaushika while speaking to his playmates and discharged the following thunderbolt of words. Wow. He was completely overcome by anger. So he was actually overcome by Kali. Kali's influence there on him. So he touched the water, now he is going to curse. So he was actually showing off before his playmates, while speaking to his playmates and discharged the following thunder. So sometimes people want to show off with their, near and dear, right? So that nature is there in this boy, Shringi. He wanted to show his power before his playmates, how powerful he is. So he spoke words like, oh, how dare he, like that. And now he's going to speak some words that will spell curse on Maharaj Parīkṣit. Yeah.
Shringi was showing his impudency amongst his playmates who were innocent. Any sane man would have prevented him from doing such great harm to all human society.
Yeah. But all the playmates are all like him, very inexperienced boys. They didn't stop him. Instead, they just were watching what Shringi is doing. Yeah. The Brahmana's son cursed the king thus. On the 7th day from today, a snake bird, Takshaka, will bite the most wretched one of the dynasty, Maharaj Parīkṣit, because of his having broken the laws of etiquette by insulting my father. Wow. You see, he took this and he cursed that the snake bird would bite him at the end of 7th day from today. And he used such words, wretched one, like that. Very bad. Yeah. Anybody? Shiva?
Thus, I can continue, Prabhu.
Yeah, please.
Thus, the beginning of the misuse of Brahmanical power began, and gradually the Brahmanas in the age of Kali became devoid of both Brahmanical powers and culture. The Brahmana boy considered Mahāṛāja Parīkṣit to be a Kulangara, or the wretched of the dynasty. But factually, the Brahmana boy himself was so because only from him did the Brahmana caste become powerless like the snake whose poison teeth are broken.
Yeah, in Kali Yuga, Brahmanas have no power. They cannot curse. And it all began because this boy misused it. Sometimes when someone misuses, their power is taken from them. Because of this Brahmana boy misusing, actually he was the one who is a wretched one. Because of him, the whole Brahmanical culture in Kali Yuga lost Brahmanical power. Continue.
The personality of Kali conquered the Brahmana boy first and gradually the other castes. Thus, the whole scientific system of the orders of society in this age has assumed the form of a vitiated caste system, which is now being uprooted by another class of men similarly influenced by the age of Kali.
Yeah. So the current caste system is all because of the beginnings like this. This is not the original system that Krishna gave. Yeah. Thereafter, when the boy returned to the hermitage, he saw a snake on his father's shoulder. And out of his grief, he cried very loudly. He was crying. He's like a very young boy, inexperienced. He was crying. He just gave a curse, now he's crying. O Brahmanas, the Rishi, who was born in the family of Angira Muni, hearing his son, Samik Rishi, hearing his son crying, gradually opened his eyes and saw the dead snake around his neck. So the Brahmana, the Rishi, he opened his eyes because he heard his son's loud crying. And he saw a dead snake, he just takes away and throws it. He doesn't mind it at all. So he threw the dead snake aside and asked his son why he was crying, whether anyone had done him harm. On hearing this, the son explained to him what had happened. Now the son will explain what had happened to him. Yeah. Yeah. So the father heard from his son that the king had been cursed. Although he should never have been condemned, for he was the best among all human beings. The Rishi did not congratulate his son, but on the contrary, began to repent, saying, Alas, what a great sinful act was performed by my son. He was awarded heavy punishment for an insignificant offense. See, the father was not like his son Shringi. Samik Rishi was very thoughtful. So he knows the greatness of Maharaj Parīkṣit as a great devotee of Lord. So when he heard his son's curse, he did not at all align with his son's act. He immediately said, "Hey, what a sinful, this is a great sinful act you performed. Right? You should not have done this. This is like, shooting a small thing with a big gun, right? So he was awarded a very great punishment, heavy punishment for an insignificant offense. He should not have done that. Yeah. The boy just showed off his power, that's all, with his friends. And a great offense was created out of this whole episode. Yeah, please read.
The king is the best of all human beings. He is the representative of God, and he is never to be condemned for any of his actions. In other words, the king can do no wrong. The king may order hanging of a culprit son of a Brahmana, but he does not become sinful for killing a Brahmana.
Yeah, king could have done that, but he doesn't do that. Because in the olden days, monarchy worked the best, because God creates the material creation, and a great devotee king who is 100% aligned with the Lord would create the best circumstances for his citizens to go back to Godhead by preserving the right culture, encouraging the right acts. So it was the best situation for the entire world. Now, cursing such a great king who is a great devotee of the Lord would only bring it's a disservice, not just to his father, it's a disservice to the entire country, because it is rare to have such a great king like Parīkṣit again. So, however, the king did not take any offense. You will see here, he did not order the hanging of the Brahmana boy, he just accepted. So that shows his greatness.
Prabhuji, quick question. So you mentioned that the Brahmanas in the Kali Yuga don't have that great power to punish or to curse anybody. But on contrary, whatever Shringi did, Parīkṣit Maharaj had to undergo that penance. So how do we understand this?
So it happened at the time. That boy has the power at the time. But after that, nobody has. The Brahmanas do not, because it's because Brahmanical culture was still there at the time because of the great rulership of Parīkṣit Maharaj. But after that, the Brahmanical culture degraded because they are not following the same standards anymore. The kings were not as great as Parīkṣit Maharaj. So the Brahmanical culture slowly degraded after that. So naturally, because of lack of following Brahmanical culture, the Brahmanas are powerless.
Right. Yeah. Understood.
Yeah. So the only person who is powerful in Kali Yuga is those who chant the holy name. They are the only people with any power. So we should treat the devotees very, very carefully.
Yeah.
Because they have. We read in the last week's class that, there is Kali Yuga is full of doshas, but Kaler dosha nide raja, full of bad qualities. But there is one good quality, which is the chanting of the holy name, and by doing that, one can achieve the highest perfection in this Kali Yuga, right? So there is only hope for holy name, right?
Right, Prabhuji. I think the responsibility is on both the parties. One is whoever condemns Vaishnavas, they are committing Vaishnava aparadha. At the same time, if somebody is a Vaishnava, he need to be very careful. He should not curse or think ill about others.
Yeah. So there is a lesson. I mean, in a general way, we can learn that ideally the king should not have been angry at this Brahmana. right? So in this, so that is he could have been a little more patient. At the same time, this Brahmana should not have cursed. He should not have expressed his anger and retaliate on the king like Shringi did. Yeah, those are the lessons from this story, in general lessons.
Right.
Yeah, now the sage is speaking to his son. Oh, my boy, your intelligence is immature, and therefore you have no knowledge that the king, who is the best among the human beings, is as good as the personality of Godhead, because he's a pure devotee. He is never to be placed on an equal footing with common man. The citizens of the state live in prosperity, being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. So he is teaching his son that whatever he did was a big mistake. He should not have done that. Because king is as good as Lord himself, especially a pure devotee like Parīkṣit Maharaj. My dear boy, the Lord who carries the wheel of a chariot is represented by the monarchical regime. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves, who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs. If the king is weak, right, if the king is not there, then the whole country will be. So this is, in today's world, we see civil war. When the rulership collapses, what happens? Citizens will plunder each other because there is no home ministry, there is no law and order. People have nobody to fear, so they will take advantage of the weaker. The stronger will take advantage of the weaker. So that is what will happen, by your such actions. You curse actually the head of the entire state. That's very wrong. Yeah, please read, anyone.
The king is said to be representative of the absolute personality of Godhead because he is trained to acquire the qualities of God to protect the living beings. The battle of Kurukshetra was planned by the Lord to establish the real representative of the Lord. Mahārāja Yudhishthira, an ideal king thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service with a martial spirit, makes a perfect king. Such a personal monarchy is far better than so-called democracy of no training and responsibility. The thieves and rogues of modern democracy seek election by misrepresentation of votes, and the successful rogues and thieves devour the mass population. One trained monarch is far better than the hundreds of useless ministerial rogues. And it is hinted herein that by abolition of monarchical regime like that of Mahārāja Parīkṣit, the mass of people become open to many attacks of the age of Kali.
Yeah, so by the abolition of monarchical king, now, so now in today's world, there is no monarchy. Even though there is monarchy, like in North Korea and all, they are all not trained. They're not devotees. So naturally, they are going to become worse than democracy, right? So the best is ideal rulership is monarchy, where the king is, or the ruler is, a great devotee of the Lord, like Parīkṣit Maharaj. If that is not there, democracy is little better. And the worst of the all is a monarchy where the king is actually non-devotee and is a merciless ruler, like in today's world we see. the monarchy is very bad. When people become dictators like Hitler, Mussolini, that's the worst part. Monarchy is worst when you consider the person is a non-devotee. Due to the termination of the monarchical regimes and the plundering of the people's wealth by rogues and thieves, there will be great social disruptions. People will be killed and injured, and animals and women will be stolen. And for all these sins, we shall be responsible. So the Samikrishi is talking to his son. The result of his action. You see, you now are eliminating the king, but now you're paving way for rogues and thieves, and the society will be disturbed, and people will be taken advantage of, and there will be a lot of sin. Yeah, let's continue. At that time, the people in general will fall systematically from the path of a progressive civilization in respect to the qualitative engagements of the caste and the orders of society and Vedic injunctions. Thus, they will be more attracted to economic development for sense gratification, and as a result, there will be an unwanted population on the level of dogs and monkeys. See, so this is all predicted. So the sages spoke perfectly. So when Brahmanical culture and Vedic culture is rooted out of the society, what happens? There will be more attraction towards economic development for sense gratification, and as a result, there will be unwanted population on the level of dogs and monkeys. This is what we see in current society. People are after only money and nothing else. Yeah. As the monkeys are too sexually inclined and dogs are shameless in sexual intercourse, the general mass of population born of illegitimate connections will systematically go astray from the Vedic way of good manners in qualitative engagements in the caste and orders of life. Just like people will become like street dogs and monkeys and animals. So that is what we are seeing today. Yeah. Now he praises the King Parīkṣit. The Emperor Parīkṣit is a pious king. He is highly celebrated and is a first-class devotee of the personality of Godhead. He is a saint among royalty, and he has performed many horse sacrifices. When such a king is tired and fatigued, being stricken with hunger and thirst, he does not at all deserve to be cursed. So the sage was completely in misalignment with his son's actions. Right? He spoke that Parīkṣit is pious king and a first-class devotee of Lord, saint among royalty, Raja Rishi, and he performed many Ashwamedha yajnas. So there is nothing that you can point out at his character. And when he was fatigued, tired, he just acted in a silly way by putting a snake around my neck. And for that simple, silly act, the punishment you gave is too grave. Then the Rishi prayed to the all-pervading personality of Godhead to pardon his immature boy, who had no intelligence and who committed the great sin of cursing a person who was completely free from all sins, who was subordinate and who deserved to be protected. Yeah, so the king felt, the Rishi prays to pardon his immature boy. But Lord will not pardon, even though, the Rishi is praying, the Lord would not pardon such a immature action, right? Because he's going against a great pure devotee. Yeah. Anybody want to read?
The Lord never forgives a person who condemns his pure devotee. Therefore, by causing a king, the foolish Sringi had committed not only a sin but also the greatest offense. Therefore, the Rishi could foresee that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead could save his boy from his sinful act. He therefore directly prayed for pardon from the Supreme Lord, who alone can do a thing which is impossible to change. The appeal was made in the name of a foolish boy who had developed no intelligence at all.
Yeah, so this is an important lesson for all of us. Lord never forgives a person who condemns his pure devotee. So we should be very careful when we behave with pure devotees, right? Especially devotees who are advanced than us. Because Lord, even though the devotee may forgive, Lord will not forgive. This is a good verse. Tirashkrita vipralabdha
Virakshita
Vipralabdha.
vipralabdha
Kshipta hata api
Shapta hatapi
nashatat pratikurvanti
Nasyatat pratikurvanti
tadbhakta prabhavopihi.
Tadbhaktaha prabhavopihi.
Please read.
The devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even though they are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed, they are never inclined to avenge themselves.
So the devotees of the Lord are very forbearing. So even though they are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed, they are never inclined to avenge themselves. So they never take revenge. They never take revenge. So this is what Mahārāja Parīkṣit shows in his behavior. Even though, so we have seen repeatedly this kind of behavior from many devotees. King Chitraketu did, right? So even Prahlad Maharaj, right? Dhruva Maharaj. So this is the nature of pure devotees. Right? So they go through everything as the will of the Lord and accept whatever comes their way. They don't complain. Iti putra kritaghena
Iti putra kratagena
Nutapto Mahamuni
Sonutapto Mahamuni
Viprakrito Rajna
Svayam Vipakto Rajna
Naivagham Tadachintaya
Naivagam Tadichan.
Tadachintayat. Okay, please read.
The sage thus regretted the sin committed by his own son. He did not take the insult paid by the king very seriously.
Yeah, so sage regretted the sin committed by his son. Yeah, so he forgave, he didn't mind. He thought, king was very fatigued, so he just did whatever he did. He didn't mind because he's a mature sage. He's not like his son. Prayasa sadhavo loke
Prayasa sadhavo loke
Dvandveshu yojita
Nirdvandveshu yojita
Nyavyata tadanti nashrishanti
Na vyatanti na hrishanti
ma guna gunashraya.
Yata atma gunashraya.
Yeah, please read.
Generally, the transcendentalist, even though engaged by others in the dualities of the material world, are not distressed, nor do they take pleasure in the worldly things, for they are transcendently engaged.
So this is the nature of pure devotees. Even though they are engaged by others in the dualities of the material world, are not distressed. So devotees, they always see every action or every activity they do is for the pleasure of the Lord. So their actions may appear like everybody else in the world, but they are beyond dualities because they are always doing service. Everything they do is for the pleasure of the Lord. So they don't enjoy the pleasures of this world, because they're transcendentally engaged. Means they're engaged only for the pleasure of the Lord. Right? So we should all take lessons from this. We should, whatever we do, either it is your grahastha dharma, as working a job, doesn't matter. Whatever is your engagement, do it as a service to Lord. Whatever you are earning is for the pleasure of the Lord. You have no desire, no plan to enjoy what you earn. So if you do like that, you will come out of the dualities of this material world. So that is a lesson for all of us. So that ends this chapter. Okay. So we took a little long today. Yeah. Any questions, comments? Yeah. If nothing, we can just take the